Audiobook Top, your new home for the finest selection of audiobooks available anywhere.
Come closer, my friends, and let me draw you into a corner of the world where the veil between the waking and the dreaming seems impossibly thin, a place where the very air breathes tales of old, and shadows hold secrets that dance just beyond the reach of reason. You'll find it tucked away, not far from the bustling eddies of the great Hudson River, yet a world apart, a pocket of stillness amidst the ceaseless churn of life. We speak of a valley, a particular sequestered glen, known to all who dwell near Tarry Town as Sleepy Hollow. Do not mistake its name for mere poetic fancy. Oh no, for it possesses a spell, a certain dreamy influence that permeates the very atmosphere. It is as if the genius of the place itself has decreed that all who enter its leafy embrace must surrender to a languid enchantment. The sun, when it chooses to grace the hollow with its rays, seems to linger, casting long, golden fingers through the ancient trees, illuminating dust motes that hang suspended like tiny, forgotten wishes. The breeze, when it stirs, carries not the hurried whispers of the outside world, but a soft, murmuring sigh, like an old woman's lullaby, telling secrets to the drowsy leaves. The roads that wind through Sleepy Hollow are not made for haste. They are trails of contemplation, meandering paths where the very stones seem to invite a slower pace, a moment to breathe and simply be asterisk. Here time itself seems to unhitch from its usual gallop and strolls with a leisurely, unburdened gait. The houses, modest and often timber-framed, seem to have grown from the very soil, their ancient stones and weathered shingles having absorbed centuries of quiet lives, of whispered prayers and hearty laughter, of children's games and hushed good nights. Smoke curls lazily from chimneys, carrying the scent of hearth and home, of rye bread baking and stews simmering, a comforting perfume that only enhances the sense of timeless serenity. But beneath this veneer of pastoral peace, there runs a subtle, almost imperceptible current. It is a whisper, barely audible above the rustle of the forest, yet pervasive, like the scent of damp earth after a summer rain. It is the whisper of the hollow itself, a peculiar resonance that has shaped the very souls of its inhabitants. They are a simple folk, these villagers, largely descendants of the early Dutch settlers, their temperaments as placid as the placid waters of the Pacantico stream that trickles through their valley. But their minds, my dear listeners, are fertile ground for the fanciful. More than any other community in this wide land, they are prone to spectral imaginings, to omens, to dreams, and to seeing shapes in the shifting shadows that play tricks upon the eye. It's in the quiet hours, when the sun dips below the western ridges, and the stars begin to prick the dark canvas of the sky, that this whisper grows stronger. When the crackle of the hearth is the loudest sound in the room, and the wind sighs through the eaves like a mournful spirit, that's when the tales begin to surface. They speak not of witches, not often, nor of goblins in the common sense, but of something far more localized, far more potent, steeped in the very loam of their valley. It is the lingering presence of those who have passed beyond, their stories woven into the very fabric of the landscape. For Sleepy Hollow is not merely a name, it is a destiny. It is a state of being, an enchantment that, once experienced, clings to the soul like morning mist to the lowlands. Visitors, however skeptical they may arrive, often leave with a strange sense of having witnessed something inexplicable, a faint chill upon their spine, a newfound respect for the tales told around the communal fires. The air itself seems charged with a gentle melancholy, a wistful memory of long-gone days and unresolved mysteries. And what are these mysteries? Ah, patience, my friends, for a true storyteller never rushes his finest revelations. But imagine, if you will, the soft clatter of hooves on a moonless night, not quite regular, not quite the sound of a living beast. Imagine the sudden, inexplicable chill that descends upon a traveler passing a particular ancient oak, even on the warmest evening. Imagine the flicker of a distant light where no dwelling stands, or the faint, almost human sigh carried on the night wind from the old churchyard. These are the threads of the hollow's whisper, weaving a tapestry of delicious dread that has been passed down from generation to generation. It is said that a Revolutionary War soldier, a Hessian trooper, met his grisly end in this very valley. He was by all accounts a fierce and fearsome fighter who rode into battle with a fury unmatched, only to have his head carried away by a cannonball in some forgotten skirmish. And though his comrades buried his body in the old churchyard, his restless spirit, it is believed, still rides the length of the hollow in the dead of night, eternally searching for his lost head. He is the preeminent ghost, the presiding genius of the place, though none dare speak his full title casually, for fear of invoking his wrath. They speak only of him, or the rider, or the phantom of the hollow. This is the essence of Sleepy Hollow, a place of profound beauty and profound mystery. It is where shadows seem to have a life of their own, where the rustle of leaves might be a whisper from the past, and where the line between reality and the supernatural is blurred beyond recognition. It is a place that invites you to dream, but also to glance over your shoulder, just once, in the deepening twilight. For here, in this secluded glen, the ancient spirits still roam, and the whisper of the hollow promises that some stories once begun never truly end. And into this world, my dear companions, our tale is about to unfold. Welcome, dear friends, to a quiet corner of the world, a place where the veil between the ordinary and the extraordinary seems thinner. Lean back, let your shoulders drop, and allow the gentle hum of the everyday to recede. We're about to embark on a journey, not just through pages, but into the very heart of a landscape painted by words, a landscape that has captivated imaginations for generations. Tonight, we open the door to a story as familiar as an old friend, yet as fresh and potent as a whispered secret, the legend of Sleepy Hollow. But before we meet Ichabod Crane, before we hear the thunderous gallop of a spectral rider, we must first understand the ground upon which these events unfold. For truly, the setting in this tale is not merely a backdrop, it is a character, a living, breathing entity that shapes destinies and whispers legends into existence. Washington Irving, our master guide, doesn't just show us a place, he invites us to feel its very pulse. Imagine, if you will, a time not so long ago, when the rhythm of life beat to a slower drum. We begin our journey along the majestic Hudson River, a ribbon of silver unspooling through a landscape of rolling hills and verdant valleys. This river, a silent witness to centuries of human endeavor, leads us northward, past bustling towns, until we reach a particular nook, a quiet eddy in the flow of time itself. This is Tarry Town. And what a wonderfully evocative name, isn't it? To tarry means to linger, to delay, to wait. And that's precisely the feeling that begins to settle upon you as you approach this place. The hurried anxieties of the world seem to dissipate, replaced by a gentle, almost dreamlike lassitude. It's the kind of place where you might find yourself stopping a moment longer than intended, simply to breathe in the air, to watch the slow drift of clouds, to listen to the distant rustle of leaves that seem to tell old stories. Irving tells us the very Dutch wives of the neighboring villages would often tarry here on market days, perhaps drawn by this peculiar sense of ease, this invitation to shed the weight of their daily chores, if only for an hour or two. It's a subtle shift, this softening of the edges of reality, but it's the first brushstroke in the masterpiece that is Sleepy Hollow. For nestled within the bosom of these hills, a short distance from Tarry Town, lies the veritable heart of our story, a little sequestered glen, known to all the country round as Sleepy Hollow. Now, the name itself is a clue, isn't it? Sleepy. It perfectly captures the profound stillness, the pervasive quietude that blankets this valley. But it's more than just quiet, it's an enchantment. Irving describes it as a drowsy, dreamy influence that seems to hang over the land, a kind of spell that permeates the very air. Think about that for a moment. Have you ever been to a place that just feels different? A place where time seems to slow down, where the worries of the outside world simply cease to exist. Perhaps it's a hidden glade in a forest, a secluded beach, or even a forgotten attic room filled with old memories. Sleepy Hollow is one such place, but amplified, its unique atmosphere woven into its very fabric. This isn't just about being tranquil, it's about a kind of hypnotic calm, a susceptibility to the fantastical. The people who live here, our narrator explains, are affected by this spell. They inherit a constitutional proneness to believe in wonders, to indulge in visions, to dream dreams. In our modern, hyper-connected, often cynical world, such a notion might seem quaint. But imagine the sheer relief, the liberating surrender, in allowing your imagination to truly run wild, unburdened by the relentless logic of the everyday. It's almost like a digital detox for the soul, a place where the signal of the rational world is just a little too weak to penetrate. And it is this very spirit of the place that gives birth to the legends. How could such a setting not foster tales of the supernatural? Where else would the spectral figure of the Headless Horseman take root and thrive? The story of this unfortunate Hessian trooper, decapitated by a cannonball during some nameless battle of the Revolutionary War, riding forth each night in search of his lost head, is not merely a local superstition. It is the very embodiment of Sleepy Hollow's peculiar magic. The rustling leaves become the whisper of his cloak, the snapping twig the crack of a whip, the distant moan of the wind his sorrowful cry. The very landscape conspires to keep his legend alive, breathing life into every shadow and every unexplained sound. This Headless Horseman is not just a ghost story, he is the guardian spirit of the place, a constant reminder of the Hollow's mysterious power, a living, or rather, unliving testament to its ability to absorb and transform history into myth. He is a part of the air they breathe, the stories they tell their children, the shadows that dance in their peripheral vision. He is the unique flavor of Sleepy Hollow. The inhabitants themselves are gentle, peaceable folk, content to live out their days in this enchanted valley. They are not tormented by the horseman, not truly. Instead, they embrace him, weaving him into the tapestry of their lives, finding a strange comfort in the familiar terror he represents. Their world is one of vivid imagination, where a falling acorn can be a supernatural omen, and a flickering firelight can conjure 1,000 shapes. In a world without constant external stimulation, their inner worlds are vibrant, rich with folklore and wonder. This introductory chapter, then, is a masterful overture. Irving isn't just setting the scene, he's setting the mood. He's inviting us to suspend our disbelief, to open our minds to the possibility that some places truly are touched by something beyond the ordinary. He's showing us how a combination of history, landscape, and human imagination can coalesce into a force so potent that it shapes an entire community and gives rise to legends that echo through time. We are, in essence, being asked to fall under Sleepy Hollow's spell ourselves, to feel that gentle drowsiness creep into our own minds, preparing us for the arrival of a certain schoolmaster, a lanky, superstitious fellow named Ichabod Crane, who is about to step into this ready-made world of enchantment and terror. So, as we close this initial chapter, remember the quietude, the lingering, the dreamy influence. Hold on to that feeling, for it is the very fabric from which the thrilling, humorous, and ultimately haunting events of the legend of Sleepy Hollow are woven. The stage is set. The air is thick with anticipation, and the Headless Horseman, somewhere out there, is surely saddling his steed. Chapter 1. The spellbound region. Come closer, my friends, and let me draw you into a corner of our world. Tucked away in the very bosom of those spacious coves that indent the eastern shore of the Hudson, just where the river spreads out into a broad, almost lake-like expanse known as the Tappan Zee. A tranquil, truly sequestered glen it is, a place where time itself seems to slow, where the very air breathes a peculiar quietude. This little valley, it has been known by many a name, but the one that clung to it, like moss to an old stone wall, was Sleepy Hollow. And let me tell you, it's not merely a poetic name, no. There truly is a drowsy, dreamy influence that seems to hang over the land, a pervasive spell that permeates the very atmosphere. Some say it comes from the peculiar construction of the surrounding landscape, its winding roads and shaded nooks that lull the senses. Others whisper of a more mystical origin, a charm woven into the earth itself by some ancient, forgotten power. Whatever its source, it's undeniable, the place bewitches the mind. It sets a dreaming humor upon the people, making them prone to visions, to musings, to a certain charming idleness of the imagination. They are a simple folk, the inhabitants of this valley, and they were always known, far and wide, by the affectionate if slightly mocking appellation of the Sleepy Hollow Boys. Now, every quiet corner, every shadowed glen, has its own guardian spirit, does it not? And Sleepy Hollow is no exception. But its presiding genius, its veritable master of ceremonies in the realm of the supernatural, is none other than a ghostly figure on horseback. A Hessian trooper, they say, who, in some forgotten battle of the Revolution, had his head carried away by a cannonball. Poor fellow! Ever since that unfortunate incident, he's condemned, so the tale goes, to ride forth nightly from the scene of the battle, galloping through the valley in search of his missing cranium. Some swear they've seen him, a headless figure astride a powerful black steed, thundering down the hollow, especially in the dark and lonely hours of the night. His haste is born of a grim purpose, for it's believed that his spectral rides must conclude before the first blush of dawn paints the eastern sky, lest he be caught unawares, trapped in this earthly realm until the following sundown. This phantom horseman, my dear listeners, casts a long, chilling shadow over the valley. He is the theme of every fireside tale, the specter invoked to quiet mischievous children, the unseen presence that quickens every heart on a lonely road. Yet, curiously, it is not merely fear that he inspires. There's a certain intimacy, a local pride almost, in having such a formidable and persistent ghost. He is their very own haunt. And his existence, while terrifying, also lends a strange validation to the other, lesser superstitions that thrive in Sleepy Hollow. For what place could foster such a prominent ghost without also cultivating a rich tapestry of other mysterious sights and sounds? The very air hums with them. Moving lights have been seen in the woods at night, and sounds of music and voices are often heard in the air about the haunted church, particularly when the wind whispers its secrets through the tall trees that stand sentinel around it. These tales, mind you, are not idly tossed about and forgotten. Oh no, they are cherished, embellished, and passed down from generation to generation with an earnestness that brooks no doubt, especially among the good women of the valley. Their imaginations, already fertile ground, are particularly susceptible to these strange influences. They gather at tea parties, their eyes wide with a mixture of dread and delight, recounting these fearful stories. They are the chief chroniclers, the keepers of the lore, ensuring that not a single shiver-inducing detail is lost to time. And the men, though they may feign a more robust skepticism, privately admit to a certain uneasiness when traversing the lonely roads after dark. They, too, have their own experiences, their own close calls with the inexplicable, which they often recount with an almost solemn certainty over a pipe and a tankard of ale. It's a wonder, truly, how this pervasive spell affects even those who arrive from the bustling, rational world outside. A stranger, venturing into Sleepy Hollow, might at first scoff at the credulity of its inhabitants. They might dismiss the tales as quaint superstitions, the product of isolated minds. But give them time. Let them breathe the heavy, dreaming air. Let them walk the silent roads beneath a moonless sky. Let them hear the rustle of leaves that sounds like a whispered name, or the creak of a branch that mimics a distant groan. Sooner or later, the potent, drowsy enchantment of the place begins to work its magic. Their own imaginations, once so firmly tethered to reality, start to wander. They find themselves looking over their shoulder, listening intently to the night, perhaps even half believing in the spectral horseman, if only for a fleeting, heart-stopping moment. Such, my friends, is the peculiar nature of Sleepy Hollow, a place not just on the map, but woven into the fabric of imagination itself. A region where the past lingers like a persistent dream, and the unseen often feels more real than the seen. It is into this world, this very atmosphere steeped in legend and shadowed by the supernatural, that our story truly begins. And it is this unique, spellbound region that will play its own silent, yet powerful, part in the tale of our unlikely hero, a schoolmaster by the name of Ichabod Crane. So, settle in, for the stage is set, the spirits are stirring, and the legend is about to unfold. Chapter 2. The ambitious schoolmaster Ichabod Crane in this sequestered glade of Sleepy Hollow, where the very air seemed to murmur with ancient tales and the whispers of the past, there arrived, some years since, a new denizen, one whose eccentric figure was destined to weave itself inextricably into the fabric of the valley's peculiar legends. This was Ichabod Crane, a man whose name, with its faint echo of the long-necked wading bird, was not unfitting for his own singular form. He hailed from the land of steady habits, Connecticut, that fertile ground for schoolmasters, and had journeyed to this Dutch stronghold in search of, as many believed, a mere livelihood, but as we shall soon discern, something far more ambitious. Imagine, if you will, this personage tall, though exceedingly lank, with narrow shoulders and arms and legs of quite disproportionate length. His hands dangled a mile out of his sleeves, and his feet might have served as shovels, so vast were their proportions. His head was small, flat at the top, with prodigious ears that protruded from either side, and large, green, glassy eyes that seemed perpetually to swim in a sea of wonder or apprehension. To complete this singular physiognomy, a long snipe-like nose projected from his brow, making him, when viewed sidewise, remarkably like a weathercock perched on the spire of a village church, forever veering with every gust of wind. And indeed, his whole frame, loosely hung together and swaying like a reed in the breeze, bore a startling resemblance to some scarecrow escaped from a cornfield, a figure more apt to frighten crows than to command the respect of boisterous boys. Ichabod Crane was, by profession, the village schoolmaster and a most important personage in his own estimation. His schoolhouse, a humble log hut, stood in a rather lonely but picturesque situation, at the foot of a woody hill, with a brook babbling hard by. Here, in this rustic temple of learning, he presided over a noisy flock of youngsters, wielding the scepter of birch with an authority tempered, perhaps, by his own timidity, yet effective enough to maintain a semblance of order. When school hours were over, however, his pedagogic severity softened, and he would often linger with the smaller urchins, particularly those whose homes promised a good dinner, chatting playfully with them, and even assisting the bigger lads in their rural labors, much to the delight of their parents. For this seemingly benevolent service, it was understood that these good folk would, in turn, provide the schoolmaster with board and lodging. Indeed, it was this very system that underscored Ichabod's frugal existence. He boarded round, as the phrase went, residing for a week or two at a time with the different farmers, a migratory bird of passage flitting from nest to nest, easing the burden on any single household while enjoying a varied succession of meals. A bed by the fire, a nook in the chimney corner, a comfortable seat at the table laden with Sleepy Hollow's bountiful fare, these were the perquisites of his itinerancy. And who could blame him? A man of his meager salary, which scarcely allowed him a pittance for the mending of his threadbare clothes, could not afford the luxuries of a fixed abode. Thus, the country wives, with their good hearts and even better cooking, ensured his sustenance, and Ichabod, ever appreciative of a well-laden table, made sure to earn his keep, not just with lessons, but with his considerable talents. For Ichabod was more than a mere master of the 3 R's. He possessed a peculiar dexterity that endeared him to the female hearts of Sleepy Hollow. He was, in truth, the village singing master. On Sundays, when the weather permitted, he would march his small choir of vociferous youngsters to the church gallery, where, with immense self-importance, he would lead the psalmody, his high, reedy voice soaring above the rustic congregational chorus. This artistic endeavor, humble though it was, granted him an entree into the polite society of the valley. He frequented evening gatherings, where his superior erudition, gleaned from a few mildewed books, and his ability to retail gossip or relate marvelous tales of the supernatural, made him a most welcome guest, particularly among the women. Ah, those tales! Ichabod possessed a veritable library of ghostly narratives, his favorite being the grim volume of Cotton Mather's History of New England Witchcraft. He devoured these pages with a fervent belief, his imagination, already fertile ground, made even more susceptible to the eerie. Every whistling blast of wind, every rustling leaf, every flickering shadow by night seemed to conjure visions of phantoms and apparitions. He was, in short, a man utterly steeped in superstition, a trait that made him at once fascinating and profoundly vulnerable in a valley already rife with spectral lore. But beneath this veneer of the scholarly and the superstitious, there beat a heart with a far more terrestrial ambition. While others might see Sleepy Hollow as a tranquil retreat, Ichabod Crane saw it as a stepping stone. As he ambled down the winding lanes, his gaze was not merely upon the picturesque scenery, but upon the signs of prosperity that abounded. He marked the fat apple orchards, the vast fields of yellow corn, the well-stocked barns brimming with the fruits of the fertile soil. He observed the comfortable, wide-spreading farmhouses, with their broad doors and casement windows, giving glimpses of inner neatness and abundance. He noted the vast herds of sleek cattle, the plump flocks of geese and ducks, the myriad swine grunting under the shade of ancient trees. These were not merely sights to be admired, they were signs of wealth, of comfort, of an enviable ease that stirred deep longings within his own impoverished breast. His mind, naturally inclined to romantic reveries, began to weave visions of domestic felicity. He pictured himself the master of such a domain, enjoying the plenty and rural luxuries that so captivated his fancy. His imagination, spurred by the prospect of such substantial comfort, would conjure up mountains of buckwheat cakes, oceans of milk and cream, fields of roasted pigs, and an endless procession of fat poultry, all the Epicurean delights he so relished. And then, his ambitious gaze settled upon the crown jewel of Sleepy Hollow's offerings, Katrina Van Tassel. She was not only the belle of the valley, a blooming lass of 18, plump and rosy-cheeked, but, more importantly, the only daughter of Baltus Van Tassel, one of the wealthiest farmers in the region. To win Katrina was to win a veritable empire, a kingdom of fat fields and sleek cattle, a manor house that bespoke opulence and ease. This was Ichabod's grand scheme, his audacious dream. He saw himself not merely as a schoolmaster, but as the future proprietor of Van Tassel's estate, trading his meager pedagogic existence for a life of unprecedented comfort and social elevation. This aspiration transformed him. His meekness, his timidity, his scarecrow appearance, all were overshadowed by the sudden, burning desire to possess this treasure. The task before him was formidable. Katrina had admirers aplenty, robust and strapping Dutch lads, and among them, one particularly formidable rival in the form of Brom Bones. But Ichabod, with his calculating mind and his keen eye for opportunity, was not one to be easily deterred. He would bring to bear his unique blend of cunning, flattery, and intellectual charm. This lanky schoolmaster, with his superstitious heart and his ravenous appetite for worldly goods, was about to embark on an enterprise that would test his mettle his wits, and perhaps his very sanity, in the enchanted and eerie precincts of Sleepy Hollow. The stage was set for a most unusual courtship, a contest of cunning and courage, played out under the watchful spectral eyes of the Hollow's most infamous resident. Chapter 3. The Prize Katrina Van Tassel. Gather round, dear friends, and lend your ears to a tale from that enchanted hollow, where shadows dance and whispered legends take flight. We speak now of the very heart of Ichabod Crane's ambition, the shining beacon that drew him like a moth to a grand, flickering flame, the magnificent Van Tassel estate. Imagine, if you will, a landscape painted by nature's most generous hand, broad, fertile fields stretching far and wide, heavy with golden grain, undulating gently like a silken cloak, orchards groaning under the weight of ruddy apples and luscious peaches, and pastures, emerald green, dotted with plump, contented cattle whose very hides shone with the gloss of good living. The old farmhouse itself, a low-slung, substantial dwelling, with its deep-set eaves and its vast, commodious barn, spoke volumes of ease and abundance. Here were stacks of wheat and mountain heaps of corn, ready for the mill. Here were huge pumpkin patches, their golden globes swelling in the sun. Here, too, the grunting chorus of fat swine, the cackling of numerous poultry, and the lowing of sleek, heavy-uddered cows, all testified to a prosperity that could make a poor schoolmaster's heart leap with a mixture of awe and profound, acquisitive yearning. Truly, to Ichabod Crane, with his meager salary and his wandering existence, this was no mere farm. It was a veritable land of Goshen, a terrestrial paradise, a kingdom of delights fashioned purely for his future comfort. And who, pray tell, was the presiding deity of this pastoral Eden? None other than the blooming Katrina Van Tassel, the only child of the wealthy Dutch farmer, Baltus Van Tassel. She was, to put it plainly, a plump and rosy-cheeked damsel, famed far and wide for her dazzling beauty, a beauty that was robust and wholesome, much like the produce of her father's farm. She possessed a playful coyness, a tantalizing archness in her manner, which, combined with the snug comforts of her future inheritance, rendered her irresistibly charming to every young swain within a 10-mile radius. Her dress was as varied and as bright as the hues of her own orchard's short, homespun petticoats, displaying the daintiest of feet and ankles, a rich, often gaudy, array of ornaments, the legacy of generations of Dutch thrift adorning her person. She was, in short, a queen of rural fashion, and a general favorite. But it was not merely Katrina's physical charms that captivated our gangling schoolmaster's heart. Oh no, for Ichabod Crane, ever a man of practical considerations, possessed a peculiar form of arithmetic when it came to matters of the heart. His discerning eye surveyed not just the maiden, but the entire domain: the geese, the ducks, the chickens, the turkeys, the pigs, the plump little Dutch horses, the vast fields of wheat and rye, the apple orchards, the dairy, the mill, the thriving barnyard, every single detail, in his feverish imagination, transformed into a dowry, a future inheritance, a promise of untold comfort and luxury. He saw himself already as the lord of this bountiful manor, perched comfortably in a vast, old armchair, watching his pigs fatten and his harvests yield their treasure. He pictured Katrina, his wife, a bustling, efficient housekeeper, managing the ample affairs of the farm, while he, Ichabod, a man of leisure and property, could devote himself to loftier pursuits, perhaps even a life of dignified indolence. His fantasies, bless his imaginative soul, ran riot. He would sell the produce of the farm, buy a sleek, fast horse, and set off to new lands, perhaps even to New York, there to exchange his bucolic wealth for a mansion of stone, far from the humble cares of a country school. The rich smell of smokehouses, the overflowing granaries, the creaking laden wagons, the very sight of the ample pantry shelves, all these were not merely sensory details to Ichabod. They were vivid premonitions of his glorious, well-fed future. And so, the fair Katrina, in his eyes, was not just a prize, she was the prize, the golden key to a life of ease and opulence, a future bathed in the warm glow of prosperity. But alas, dear listeners, even in such a paradise, shadows of rivalry loom large. For Katrina Van Tassel, being a prize of such magnitude, attracted a host of suitors, each vying for her hand and her inheritance. Among these, the most formidable, the very chieftain of the local lads, was the redoubtable Abraham Van Brunt, more commonly known as Brom Bones. A burly, broad-shouldered fellow, with a booming laugh and a mischievous twinkle in his eye, Brom was the hero of every country frolic, the best rider, the strongest man, and the most boisterous mischief-maker in the entire countryside. His very presence could clear a room. His wit could charm a bird from a tree, and his strength could fell an ox. He possessed a string of wild, half-broken horses, which he alone could master, and he prided himself on his horsemanship and his prowess in every rustic sport. Brom Bones was, in essence, the very antithesis of Ichabod Crane, strong where Ichabod was weak, bold where Ichabod was timid, a natural leader where Ichabod was a nervous follower. He was the undisputed idol of the local youths, and any swain who dared to cast a longing eye upon Katrina Van Tassel usually found himself quickly discouraged by Brom's intimidating presence or, worse, by one of his legendary practical jokes. This formidable rival, however, did not daunt our tenacious Ichabod. Oh no, for where physical strength and boisterous charm failed, Ichabod resolved to employ his particular talents. He was, after all, a man of letters, a master of song, and a respected educator. His visits to the Van Tassel farmhouse, ostensibly for the purpose of imparting his musical skills or offering sage advice to the younger Van Tassel children, became increasingly frequent. Often in the long golden afternoons, one could espy him on his bony steed Gunpowder, with his arms swinging like flails, making his way directly to the very heart of the Van Tassel domain, his eyes already feasting on the promised abundance, his heart alight with the fiery, acquisitive flame of romantic ambition. He was determined, come what may, to win the fair Katrina, and with her, the entire earthly paradise that surrounded her. Such, then, was the nature of the prize, and such was the burning desire that drove our lanky schoolmaster to brave the very jaws of rivalry for the hand of the blooming Katrina Van Tassel. Chapter 4. The Local Hero Brom Bones. Ah, my dear readers, come closer now, for we must turn our gaze from the gangling pedagogue and delve into the very heart of Sleepy Hollow's spirited life. Every valley, every hamlet has its champion, its very own king of the roost, and in our quiet Dutch retreat, that title belonged, undoubtedly, to one Abraham Van Brunt, though he was known far and wide, and much more fittingly as Brom Bones. Imagine, if you will, a figure cast in the robust mold of the sturdy Dutch forefathers, a man built for the rigors of colonial life and the hearty mirth of its leisure. Brom was a broad-shouldered, brawny fellow, a very Hercules in homespun, with a face that, though not precisely handsome in the classical sense, beamed with an irresistible mischief and a healthy, sun-kissed glow. His hair, a thick, unruly mop, seemed perpetually to defy the dictates of a comb, much like the man himself defied the niceties of polite society when a good prank was afoot. He was the very picture of rough and ready masculinity, the kind of lad who, with a single clap on the back, could either send you sprawling or imbue you with a sudden, inexplicable surge of courage. Brom's spirit was as untamed as his physique. He was a creature of boundless good humor, a veritable fountain of boisterous jokes and hearty laughter, yet beneath that affable exterior lay a streak of sheer, unadulterated daredevilry. He earned his moniker, Bones, not for any gauntness, quite the opposite, but for his strength, his willingness to tackle any challenge, and perhaps, for his ability to make others' bones rattle with a well-timed jest or a playful punch. His horse, a formidable black steed aptly named Daredevil, was his faithful companion, a creature as wild and spirited as its master, renowned throughout the county for its prowess in races and its master's unmatched skill in the saddle. Together, man and beast cut a truly impressive, and often intimidating, figure upon the roads of Sleepy Hollow. Brom was, without question, the undisputed chieftain of the village lads. Wherever a prank was brewing, wherever a frolic was planned, wherever a daring feat of horsemanship was attempted, Brom Bones was the orchestrator, the ringleader, the very soul of the escapade. The young men of the valley looked up to him with a blend of admiration and fear, for to be in Brom's favor was to be part of the inner circle, but to incur his displeasure was to invite a world of good-natured, yet often humiliating mischief. The girls, too, found him irresistible. He possessed that peculiar magnetism that draws the eye and stirs the heart, a dashing rogue with a twinkle in his eye and a ready compliment on his lips, yet never one to be pinned down by sentimentality. And it was this very magnetism, this inherent dominion, that made Brom Bones the natural, indeed the presumptive, suitor of Katrina Van Tassel. She was the village belle, the heiress to the richest farm in the valley, and Brom, with his robust charm and undisputed local standing, had long considered her his own private domain. His courtship was not one of delicate poetry or whispered declarations, no indeed. It was a bold, forthright affair, brimming with confidence and an almost proprietary air. He would descend upon the Van Tassel farmhouse on his formidable steed, his laugh echoing through the fields, a very whirlwind of energy and swagger. He was a familiar and welcome sight to old Baltus, who appreciated a sturdy, strapping lad, and to Katrina herself, who, though she enjoyed the attentions of all her admirers, seemed to grant Brom a special mischievous indulgence. He would clear out rivals with a casual remark or a pointed glance, cementing his claim without ever having to utter a formal proposal. He was, in short, the alpha male of Sleepy Hollow, and he knew it. Then, into this perfectly ordered, Brom-centric universe, floated our Ichabod Crane, like a crane, indeed, bewildered and slightly off-kilter. At first, Brom viewed the lanky schoolmaster with a kind of amused indifference, perhaps even a touch of patronizing pity. Here was a creature so utterly unlike himself, so devoid of physical prowess or social grace, that he couldn't possibly pose a threat. Brom would occasionally tease him, perhaps with a sly comment during a gathering, but largely ignored the pedagogue's quiet machinations and his seemingly endless visits to the Van Tassel farm. But the persistent drip-drip-drip of Ichabod's attentions, his endless hours spent at Katrina's side, his very presence, began to chafe upon Brom's kingly sensibilities. It dawned upon the stalwart youth that this scrawny, bookish man was not merely a curious specimen but a rival a persistent, insidious rival, who, despite his obvious disadvantages, seemed to be making inroads into the affections of his Katrina. Brom, who was accustomed to simply charming or bullying his way to victory, found himself facing an opponent who refused to play by the established rules of rural courtship. Ichabod didn't challenge him to a wrestling match, he sang psalms with Katrina. He didn't race horses, he flattered old Baltus. He was an irritant, a persistent buzzing fly in Brom's otherwise perfectly orchestrated life. And so, Brom's good humor curdled into a simmering resentment, which, being Brom, manifested itself not in direct confrontation, but in a series of ever more elaborate and humiliating pranks. For Brom was a master of practical jokes, and he now turned his considerable talents and his loyal band of cronies towards making Ichabod's life a living, though comically painful hell. One blustery evening, as Ichabod gathered his pupils for a singing lesson in the old schoolhouse, filling the air with his nasally, discordant tunes, Brom and his gang approached under the cloak of darkness. With nimble, mischievous hands, they stopped up the chimney with a cunning arrangement of bricks and mud. The room soon filled with a thick, acrid smoke, choking the students and sending Ichabod into a fit of gasping coughs, his song utterly extinguished, his dignity smoldering like the embers in his choked fireplace. The children, delighted by the chaos, dissolved into giggles, while Ichabod, tears streaming from his eyes, could only fumble desperately with the obstruction, utterly unaware of the cunning minds behind his sudden misery. On another occasion, finding the schoolhouse empty, they proceeded to turn every single item within topsy-turvy. Desks were stacked precariously, benches were overturned, the teacher's own chair was perched atop the chimney, and the blackboard, usually a canvas for Ichabod's grand calligraphy, bore a crude, unflattering caricature of the schoolmaster himself. Ichabod, arriving the next morning, found his orderly world in utter disarray, his meticulously arranged lessons scattered to the winds, and his authority undermined by unseen, phantom hands. He fumed, he fretted, but he knew in his heart, though he dared not speak it aloud, the identity of the chief instigator. Even Ichabod's borrowed horses were not safe from Brom's ingenious malice. When Ichabod would borrow a particularly placid old farm horse for his Sunday rides or his visits to Katrina, Brom would somehow get hold of the creature and, through some mysterious horse-whispering trickery, teach it the most intractable habits. He would train the horse to pull back on the halter when mounted, to shy at shadows, to bolt unexpectedly, or to refuse to move entirely, leaving Ichabod in a state of flustered embarrassment, struggling to control a beast that seemed to have suddenly developed a mind of its own. Imagine poor Ichabod, trying to impress Katrina with his equestrian skills, only to find himself clinging for dear life to a bucking, stubborn animal that seemed intent on pitching him headlong into a ditch. The very sight was enough to send Brom and his boys into paroxysms of suppressed laughter. Brom's pranks were not limited to grand spectacles. They were a constant, nagging torment. Dogs, which usually respected Ichabod's severe air, were somehow incited to bark at him ferociously from behind every bush. The windows of his schoolhouse were mysteriously broken, requiring him to spend his meager earnings on repairs. His well-stocked larder, filled with the produce he received from his grateful students, would mysteriously vanish, only to reappear later, half-eaten and scattered. Ichabod was subjected to a relentless campaign of petty vexations and subtle humiliations, all designed to chip away at his confidence and make him a laughingstock in the eyes of the community. Yet, Through all of this, Ichabod bore his trials with a remarkable, if somewhat pathetic, stoicism. He was too fearful, too physically unsuited, and perhaps too inwardly preoccupied to retaliate directly. He would sigh, he would grumble, he would try to ignore the taunts and the mishaps, hoping they would simply cease. But Brom Bones was not one to tire of a good sport, especially when his rival stubbornly refused to acknowledge defeat. And so, the rivalry between the burly, boisterous Brom and the lanky, timid Ichabod became the talk of the valley, a grand, unspoken drama played out across the fields and farmhouses of Sleepy Hollow. It was a clash of titans, though one titan was armed with a quick wit and a heavy hand, and the other with a Latin grammar and a quivering heart. The stage was set, dear reader, for a conflict that would ultimately shape the destiny of our poor schoolmaster, and leave an indelible mark upon the very fabric of this enchanted glen. Chapter 5, The Fateful Party. Ah, but the turning point in our tale, my friends, arrived with the golden glow of an autumn evening, heralded by a messenger on horseback, a humble Negro lad, mind you, but bearing tidings that set Ichabod Crane's very soul aflutter. An invitation penned with the elegant flourish of old Baltus Van Tassel himself, to a quilting frolic at his bountiful farmhouse. A mere quilting frolic, you might think, but to Ichabod, whose heart already beat a lively tattoo for the fair Katrina, this was no less than a royal summons, a golden key to unlock the treasure chest of his dearest desires. His imagination, a swift and soaring thing when it came to matters of self-interest, instantly painted a glorious canvas. He saw himself, not as the poor country schoolmaster, but as the triumphant suitor, the master of the Van Tassel domain. He envisioned Katrina, his beloved Katrina, by his side, presiding over acres of fertile land, herds of plump cattle, and granaries bursting with bounty. He saw the grand old farm, with its orchards and haystacks, not as a life's labor, but as a stepping stone. A swift sale, a migration to some more lordly mansion in the Genesee country, a vast fortune, and a troop of flaxen-haired children scampering about, such were the dreams that danced through Ichabod's head, eclipsing the very sun in their brilliance. With a mind thus inflated, and a heart pounding like a drum, Ichabod embarked upon his grand preparations. His best, if somewhat faded, suit was donned with meticulous care. He borrowed a horse, a rickety, raw-boned old Dutch steed named Gunpowder, from his crusty landlord, Hans Van Ripper. This venerable nag, whose only virtue was a venerable age and a stubborn refusal to fall down, was as ill-suited to Ichabod's lanky frame as a saddle on a scarecrow. With a stirrup iron that had long since given up the ghost, and a bridle mended with rope, our hero set forth, a most comical figure, a very Don Quixote of the hollow, his elbows flapping like a pair of wings, his knees almost reaching the horse's ears, and his whole equipage a spectacle of rustic grandeur. The journey itself was a balm to his soul. The setting sun cast long, purpling shadows across the fields, the air crisp with the scent of burning leaves, the distant lowing of cattle, and the cheerful cackle of geese adding to the symphony of the countryside. Each farm he passed, each picturesque vista, only fanned the flames of his avarice and ambition. Soon, he thought, all this, or something far grander, shall be mine! His heart swelled with a sweet, if slightly greedy, anticipation. At last, he arrived at the Van Tassel mansion, a very hub of rustic merriment. Carriages and horses of every description crowded the yard, and the air buzzed with the lively chatter of neighbors, and the merry strains of a fiddle. The house itself seemed to brim with warmth and welcome, its low, wide-eaved roof sheltering a scene of boundless hospitality. Farmers, their wives, rosy-cheeked daughters, and sturdy sons mingled freely, a vibrant tapestry of Sleepy Hollow society. And then, the feast! Ah, that supper! Ichabod's eyes, already wide with wonder at the prospect of Katrina, grew wider still at the sight of the groaning tables. Plates piled high with smoked beef and ham, roasted chickens, savory pies, preserves of every hue, bowls of clabber and cream, and, of course, the famed New England donuts, those delightful olicoques. Ichabod, ever the gourmand, ate with an energy born of both hunger and the sheer joy of abundance, imagining himself as the lord of this very spread. The evening wore on, a delightful blur of hearty laughter, whispered gossip, and the lively scraping of the fiddle. Ichabod, not one to shy from a turn, even took to the dance floor, his lanky frame a-jiggle with awkward enthusiasm, his gaze fixed always on the radiant Katrina. Brom Bones, the formidable rival, was also there, circling like a hawk, his eyes sharp, his wit ready, a constant, irritating shadow to Ichabod's burgeoning hopes. Yet for a time, the sheer joy of the occasion, the warmth of the company, and the promise of Katrina's smile, kept the darker thoughts at bay. But as the supper cleared, and the guests settled into comfortable circles around the crackling fire. A change swept through the company. The merry songs gave way to tales, and the tales, as they always do in Sleepy Hollow, turned to specters and apparitions, to haunted glens and headless riders. The old wives, with their wrinkled faces and knowing eyes, recounted chilling legends of local ghosts, of marching Dutchmen without heads, and of the woman in white who forever haunted Raven Rock. Brombones, ever the showman, and with a mischievous glint in his eye, took center stage. He spoke of his own encounters with the Headless Horseman, of racing the ghostly rider, of being challenged to a trial of speed, and even, he claimed, of once unhorsing the fiend at the bridge, only to see the spectral head vanish in a puff of smoke. Each tale was recounted with a flourish, designed, it seemed, not only to entertain but to send a shiver down the spine of a certain gangly schoolmaster, who sat, pale and wide-eyed, absorbing every dreadful word. Ichabod, despite his earlier skepticism, felt the icy grip of fear tightening around his heart. The joyous warmth of the party began to recede, replaced by a growing chill. As the midnight hour approached, and the last embers of the fire flickered low, the guests began to take their leave, their minds filled with the night's revelry and its chilling legends. Only Ichabod lingered, his heart a tumult of hope and trepidation. This was it, the moment he had dreamt of, the private interview with Katrina Van Tassel, the moment of truth. What passed between them that night? Dear friends, only Katrina's own playful spirit and Ichabod's mournful sigh could truly tell. But suffice it to say, when he finally emerged from the parlor, his customary jauntiness had vanished. His face was long, his shoulders slumped, and his once inflated hopes had deflated like a burst balloon. The golden key to his treasure chest had proven to be naught but a rusty nail. He found Gunpowder still waiting, though perhaps even more disconsolate than his master. With a heavy heart and a mind plagued by the ghostly tales of the night, Ichabod mounted his steed, the festive lights of the Van Tassel farmhouse slowly fading behind him. The road home, once a path to glorious dreams, now stretched before him as a dark and foreboding tunnel, leading only to solitude and the spectral shadows of Sleepy Hollow. Chapter 6. The midnight ride. The last strains of the fiddler's tune had long since faded into the crisp autumn air, and the boisterous laughter of the Van Tassel party now echoed only in Ichabod Crane's memory, a bittersweet reminder of a night that had begun with such soaring hopes and ended with such a dismal thud. He stood beneath the old elm at the gate, his hand reluctantly upon the reins of old Gunpowder, a lean, gaunt animal that seemed to share his master's current despondency. The warmth of the hearth, the tantalizing aroma of supper, the dazzling vision of Katrina Van Tassel all now felt impossibly distant, replaced by the chill of the night and the crushing weight of a rejected suitor's heart. Ah, Ichabod! Poor, foolish dreamer. He had ventured forth, puffed up with visions of riches and domestic bliss, only to have them deflate like a punctured bellows. Katrina, with all her rustic charms and coquettish wiles, had made it plain enough, in her own subtle country fashion, that his suit was quite unwelcome. Or perhaps it was merely the effect of Brombones, that boisterous, broad-shouldered rival, whose very presence seemed to overshadow Ichabod like a looming storm cloud. Whatever the cause, the dream was shattered, the golden apple unreachable. So, with a sigh that seemed to stir the very leaves about him, Ichabod hoisted his long, lank frame onto Gunpowder's back. The horse, usually a creature of lethargic slowness, seemed to sense the need for haste, or perhaps merely the absence of a destination worth lingering for. They set off, not with the spirited trot of a triumphant lover, but with the mournful, jaded pace of one who had lost all. The road wound through the heart of Sleepy Hollow, a path Ichabod had traversed countless times, yet never with such a heavy heart, nor such a profound sense of foreboding. The familiar woods, usually a source of pleasant contemplation, now took on an ominous aspect under the pale, waning moonlight. Every rustle of leaves was a whisper, every snapping twig a phantom step. The air grew colder, the shadows deeper, and Ichabod's already fertile imagination, stoked by the ghost stories he'd so eagerly consumed that evening, began to work its dreadful magic. He passed the venerable old tree, said to be haunted by the spirit of Major Andre, and though he tried to whistle a cheerful tune, his lips trembled, and the sound died in his throat. He spurred Gunpowder, hoping to outpace the chilling tales that now crowded his mind. But the old horse, true to his nature, seemed to possess a will of his own and not one for hurried journeys. It was then, in a particularly dark and desolate part of the road, where the trees closed in like conspiring specters, that Ichabod's heart leaped into his throat and seemed to lodge there, a cold, hard knot of terror. From the thicket of trees by the roadside, he became aware of something black, gigantic, and ghastly, standing in the gloom by the side of a brook that rippled alongside their path. It seemed to him as if it were a horseman of huge dimensions, mounted on a black horse of equally formidable size. A cold dread seeped into Ichabod's very bones. He halted, struck dumb with fear. He dared not hail it, for fear of a terrifying response. He dared not move on, for fear of provoking it. For a moment he sat petrified, his eyes wide and unblinking, fixed upon the spectral figure. Then, gathering what little courage remained, and remembering the common counsel of all who deal with specters, he essayed to sing a psalm tune. The words quavered from his pale lips, a thin, reedy sound lost in the vast silence of the night. No sooner had the tremulous notes died away than the spectral figure began to move slowly, deliberately, falling indirectly behind Ichabod. A chill that had nothing to do with the night air ran down Ichabod's spine. He urged Gunpowder forward, a desperate plea in his voice, but the old horse merely quickened his pace to a reluctant trot, matched by the relentless, silent pursuit behind. Ichabod dared not look back, but he could feel the presence, a suffocating aura of malevolence. He clutched the saddle horn, his knuckles white. The thought of the Headless Horseman, the dominant spirit of Sleepy Hollow, flashed through his mind, not as a mere tale, but as a living, terrifying reality. The legend whispered that the horseman, a Hessian trooper whose head had been carried away by a cannonball in the Revolutionary War, rode forth each night from the churchyard in search of his lost head, and that his greatest delight lay in chasing late-night travelers through the hollow. Suddenly, a gust of wind, or perhaps the mere tremor of the spectral presence, caused Ichabod's old hat to blow off. He thought for a moment of stopping to retrieve it, but the thought of facing his pursuer, even for an instant, was too horrifying. He pressed on, his eyes fixed desperately on the path ahead, hoping for some sign of safety. Now, spurred by an inexplicable force, Gunpowder roused himself to an unwanted speed. Perhaps it was the shared terror, or perhaps some unseen hand urged him on. Ichabod, clinging on for dear life, found himself in a wild, headlong chase. He risked a glance over his shoulder, and oh, what a sight met his eyes! The figure behind him was indeed a horseman of gigantic stature, upon a black horse of equally vast proportions, and the most horrifying detail of all, it had no head. Or rather, its head was not upon its shoulders, but held upon the pommel of the saddle, a ghastly, grinning object that sent a shriek of pure terror from Ichabod's very soul. He dug his heels into Gunpowder's flanks, pleading, exhorting, threatening. "Gallop, Gunpowder! Fly for your life!" he cried, his voice a hoarse croak. The old horse, for once, responded with a burst of speed that might have astonished even Brom Bones. They flew along the road, past darkening fields and looming trees, the clatter of Gunpowder's hooves echoed by the thunderous beat of the spectral steed behind them. Closer and closer it came. Ichabod could feel the hot breath of the pursuing horse on his back, hear the whistling rush of air as its rider leaned forward. He recalled the legend: the Headless Horseman could only pursue his victims as far as the old stone bridge over the churchyard stream. If he could but reach that bridge, he would be safe. Safety, a word that tasted like nectar on his parched tongue. With a final, desperate burst of energy, Gunpowder plunged down the short descent, across the narrow plank bridge, and scrambled up the opposite bank. Ichabod, turning his head, saw the Headless Horseman halt on the other side, a dark, motionless silhouette against the paling sky. A wave of relief, so profound it almost made him faint, washed over him. He was safe. He had crossed the boundary. The fiend could not follow. But alas for Ichabod Crane. Just as he turned to look, with an eager expectation of seeing the specter vanish, he beheld, to his unutterable dismay, the goblin rider raise his severed head and hurl it, with a tremendous force, directly at him. It was a missile of formidable weight and accuracy. It struck Ichabod Crane full upon the head with a tremendous crash. He was tumbled headlong into the dust, and Gunpowder, freed from his terrified rider, bolted off into the night, riderless, bridleless, and without his saddle, which had come loose in the chaotic scramble. The quiet of Sleepy Hollow returned, broken only by the distant whinny of a fleeing horse and the soft whisper of the wind through the autumn leaves. All was still. The Headless Horseman, if he was indeed a spirit, had vanished, and Ichabod Crane, the ambitious schoolmaster, the hopeful suitor, the terror-struck traveler, had vanished too. The road lay empty, shrouded once more in its habitual mystery, a silent testament to the night's horrifying events. Only a scattered saddle, a loose bridle, and a smashed pumpkin remained on the dusty path near the old bridge. the only clues to a disappearance that would forever become the most tantalizing and terrifying legend of Sleepy Hollow. Chapter 7. The unsolved mystery. The sun, though brilliant, seemed almost too keen that morning, stripping the landscape bare of the mists that usually clung like comforting shrouds to Sleepy Hollow. It revealed a world just as it had been, and yet profoundly altered. Old Baltus Van Tassel, rousing himself with a contented stretch after a night of merriment, was the first to notice something amiss. Gunpowder, Ichabod Crane's raw-boned steed, stood patiently, indeed rather too patiently, at the farm gate. His saddle was askew, his bridle loose, and no sign of Ichabod. A curious sight, certainly. The horse, usually a creature of flighty temperament, seemed unusually calm, as if he had seen a thing or two himself and decided discretion was the better part of valor. Alarm, a slow-burning ember in the hearth of the community, began to glow. Katrina, beautiful still, but with a new shadow beneath her eyes, confirmed that Ichabod had indeed departed some hours past, her last memory of him being a lingering, if slightly awkward, farewell. The servants, busy with the morning chores, recounted how Gunpowder had returned riderless. The news spread like wildfire fanned by a bellows, crackling from farmhouse to farm gate. Ichabod Crane, the schoolmaster, the singing master, the aspiring suitor, was nowhere to be found. A search party was hastily assembled, a motley crew of farmers and their sons, their faces etched with a mixture of concern and a certain morbid excitement. They followed the path Ichabod would have taken, down the winding road that dipped into hollows and rose over wooded knolls, the very path believed to be haunted by the spectral horseman. Each rustle of leaves, each snapping twig, seemed to hold a whispered secret. They scanned the woods, called his name into the stillness, their voices swallowed by the vast, indifferent landscape. It was near the old church bridge, the very spot where legend placed the Headless Horseman's nightly haunt, that they found the first definitive and utterly chilling clues. There, trampled deep into the dust of the road, lay Ichabod Crane's rusty, much-worn wool hat. It was a familiar, if humble, sight, now flattened and almost unrecognizable. A gasp rippled through the small group. A few yards further, amidst the tangled roots of an ancient sycamore, something else lay shattered, a pumpkin. Not just any pumpkin, but a large, magnificent specimen, undeniably the very one that had been the pride of Farmer Van Tassel's patch, and which, by all accounts, had been Ichabod's prize from the feast. It lay in pieces, its golden flesh splattered like grotesque brains upon the dark earth. There was no body, no trace of the schoolmaster himself, just the hat and the pumpkin. The scene spoke volumes, or rather, it screamed in a language only the people of Sleepy Hollow truly understood. The battleground, as it was soon dubbed, was examined with a solemn, almost ritualistic reverence. Old Baltus Van Tassel, usually a man of jovial disposition, stood scratching his head, his usual hearty laugh replaced by a perplexed frown. Brom Bones, on the other hand, surveyed the scene with an air of profound thoughtfulness, a peculiar glimmer in his eye. He stooped to pick up a particularly jagged shard of the pumpkin, turning it over in his hand, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. He even let out a hearty, if somewhat forced, guffaw, declaring it a prank of the Headless Horseman, no doubt. His explanation, though delivered with a booming voice, had a strange, hollow ring to it. The theories began to blossom, wild and thorny, across the hollow. Some whispered of highwaymen, but why no struggle? Why only the hat and the pumpkin? Others suggested Ichabod had simply run off, perhaps intimidated by the wealth of the Van Tassels or embarrassed by his romantic failure. But Ichabod, for all his eccentricities, was not known for such cowardly flight. The most popular, and indeed, the most readily accepted explanation, was, of course, the supernatural. Who else but the Headless Horseman, roused to anger or mischief by the schoolmaster's lingering presence, could have wrought such a neat, yet utterly terrifying disappearance? Had the grim specter, instead of merely chasing him, decided to claim Ichabod as his own, spiriting him away into the spectral realm? Brom Bones, the very picture of rustic indifference, made no secret of his convictions. He recounted the tale of Ichabod's midnight ride with a newfound zest, embellishing details, mimicking Ichabod's terror, and demonstrating with gusto how the pumpkin, no doubt flung with supernatural force, had shattered the poor schoolmaster's head. His stories, delivered with dramatic flourishes and accompanied by roars of laughter, became instant classics. A few days later, it was observed that Brom Bones had acquired a new saddle, a magnificent, gleaming piece of leatherwork, far finer than any he'd possessed before. And when asked about it, he merely winked, a knowing, almost mischievous glint in his eye, and mumbled something about a fair exchange. The little schoolhouse, once filled with the drone of lessons and the occasional shriek of a disciplined child, was abandoned. The window panes were broken, the door sagged on its hinges, and the once neat playground grew wild with weeds. It became a place of whispers and cautious glances, an eerie monument to a baffling disappearance. For years, the story of Ichabod Crane's encounter with the Headless Horseman would be recounted around crackling hearths and hushed campfires. The old German wives, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames, swore that Ichabod had been spirited away by supernatural means, carried off by the demon rider. They spoke of hearing his wailing voice in the wind on stormy nights, and of seeing his pale, lanky form riding alongside the horseman, forever doomed to a spectral chase. But there was another version, a more mundane, yet strangely comforting, explanation, propagated by a certain old country wag, a man who had visited New York and returned with a worldly cynicism. He claimed that Ichabod, humiliated by his rejection and disheartened by the taunts of Brom Bones, had simply decamped. He had, according to this wag, migrated to a distant county, turned lawyer, then politician, and finally, by some strange twist of fate, a judge. He was, the story went, a successful man, married to a rich widow, and a pillar of the community, though he never spoke of Sleepy Hollow. This version, however, never quite took root in the fertile soil of local imagination. It lacked the drama, the mystery, the chilling thrill that the Headless Horseman provided. So, the mystery endured. The Headless Horseman, rather than being dispelled, gained new terror and a fresh victim for his legend. Ichabod Crane, the ambitious, awkward schoolmaster, was swallowed by the folklore of Sleepy Hollow, becoming not a forgotten footnote, but an integral, spectral part of its very fabric. His fate remained a tantalizing enigma, a tale passed from generation to generation, fueling the whispers, the shivers, and the enduring, delightful dread of Sleepy Hollow. And thus, the unspoken question hung forever in the air, drifting like the mists over the creek. Was it the supernatural, or something far more earthly, that spirited away Ichabod Crane? The answer, like the Phantom Rider himself, forever just out of reach. Chapter 8, The Power of a Legend. The soft glow of a dying fire flickers, casting long dancing shadows on the walls. The air is still, save for the faint whisper of a distant breeze. A voice, rich and resonant, begins to speak, drawing the listener closer. Sleepy Hollow. A name whispered with a certain reverence, a certain shiver, even in the brightest of days. It was a place apart, this little glen nestled deep within the folds of the Catskills, where time itself seemed to drowse and drift. The very air there was saturated with dreams and fancies, a brooding quietude that invited the supernatural to settle in its heart like a mist upon the hills. You see, for all its pastoral charm, Sleepy Hollow was not merely a landscape of verdant fields and babbling brooks. It was a canvas upon which the collective imagination of generations had painted its most vivid and enduring fears. And none, dear friends, none shone brighter or cast a longer shadow than the spectral figure known throughout the countryside as the Headless Horseman. The tale, you must understand, was not a mere campfire yarn, spun on a whim and forgotten with the dawn. Oh no, it was the very cornerstone of Sleepy Hollow's identity, the haunting melody that played beneath every lullaby, every sermon, every whispered secret. It was born, as all good legends are, from the crucible of history and tragedy. They say, with bated breath and wide, unblinking eyes, that during the Revolutionary War, a Hessian trooper, a formidable warrior of the German auxiliaries, had been dispatched to this very glen. In a skirmish, a cannonball, unforgiving and swift, had ripped through his neck, severing his head clean from his shoulders, leaving naught but a gruesome, gushing cavity where his gaze once met the world. His comrades, in their hasty retreat, had buried him unceremoniously in the old churchyard. But, alas, such a violent end, such an incomplete repose, was not destined for eternal slumber. The restless spirit of this decapitated dragoon was said to rise each night from his grave. He would mount his coal-black steed, a creature as wild and untamed as its rider's tormented soul, and thunder through the hollow in search of his lost head. His nightly patrol, they claimed, took him from the scene of his demise, through the darkest stretches of the road, and often ended with a terrifying dash across the very bridge that spanned the Pocantico Creek, just beside the old church. To see him gallop past, head tucked beneath his arm or perhaps resting upon the pommel of his saddle, was to know a fear that chilled the very marrow. This phantom, known by many names the Galloping Hessian, the Headless Horseman of Sleepy Hollow, was not a rare apparition. He was a regular, as common a sight, or so the villagers believed, as the moon itself. Farmers returning home late from market would recount breathless tales of his thunderous approach, the frantic clatter of hooves, the sudden rush of cold air as he streaked by. Old women, huddled by their hearths, would cross themselves at the mere mention of his name, their faces etched with centuries of inherited dread. And it was this legend, this omnipresent shadow, that formed the very fabric of Sleepy Hollow's social gatherings. In the long winter evenings, around roaring firesides, with cider steaming and pies cooling, the tale would be told and retold. Each narrator, with a storyteller's flair, adding their own embellishments, their own shudder-inducing details, their own solemn affirmation of its truth. They were not just stories, they were chronicles, passed down from father to son, mother to daughter, growing richer, deeper, more terrifying with each retelling. The younger folk, eager to prove their mettle, would feign indifference, but their quickened breaths and darting eyes betrayed the profound effect the horsemen had upon their youthful imaginations. Now, into this cauldron of superstition and whispered dread arrived our worthy schoolmaster, Ichabod Crane, a man of intellect, yes, a reader of ponderous tomes and weighty philosophies. Yet for all his learning, Ichabod possessed a peculiar susceptibility to tales of the supernatural. Indeed, his mind, though sharp, was a fertile ground for planting the seeds of fear. The more grisly the story, the more ghastly the apparition, the more greedily Ichabod would devour it. He would sit, long-legged and lanky, his small eyes gleaming in the firelight, absorbing every detail, every tremor of dread, every ghostly sigh. He was a connoisseur of fright, our Ichabod. And the tales of the Headless Horseman, delivered with such conviction by the earnest inhabitants of Sleepy Hollow, found a ready and eager receptacle in his impressionable soul. He would listen, transfixed, his imagination working overtime, conjuring vivid images of the headless specter and his infernal ride. The fear he experienced was not just a fleeting sensation, it was a slow burning ember that, once ignited, would smolder long after the stories had ceased. As he would wend his solitary way home, late at night, his own form a grotesque silhouette against the moonlit fields, these tales would play upon his mind with insidious power. Every rustle of leaves would become the silken whisper of a ghostly garment. Every creak of a branch would be the groan of a tormented spirit. The distant hoot of an owl, the melancholy howl of a watchdog, all would morph into portents of the Headless Horseman's imminent arrival. His journey home, once a simple trek, became a perilous gauntlet, paved with the bricks of his own burgeoning fears, each shadow a potential assailant, each gust of wind a spectral breath. For this, my friends, is the true power of a legend, especially one so deeply ingrained, so faithfully believed. It transcends the mere telling. It seeps into the very soil, colors the very sky, and shapes the very souls of those who live beneath its shadow. The Headless Horseman was not just a story in Sleepy Hollow. He was a living, breathing, galloping presence, an unseen force that molded their fears and fueled their fantasies. And in Ichabod Crane, with his delicate nerves and vivid imagination, the legend found its most perfect, most vulnerable, and perhaps most tragic devotee. The stage, you see, was perfectly set. The player, all unknowing, had stepped into the tale, and the grand, terrifying drama was about to unfold. Hark, my dear readers, and draw nigh, for the shadows lengthen, and the tale I am about to spin is not merely of spectral riders and moonlit chases, but of the phantoms that gallop through the very corridors of our own hearts. You recall, I trust, the lanky figure of Ichabod Crane, that worthy pedagogue, whose imagination was so fertile it could conjure a legion of goblins from a rustling leaf. His encounter with the Headless Horseman, whether true specter or clever prank, serves as a poignant, nay, instructive allegory for the horsemen that pursue us all through the dark glens of life. We often imagine our fears as an external, thundering menace, much like the Hessian trooper. But I propose that the true horseman, the one that truly conquers us, often rides from within, a phantom of our anxieties, our avarice, our superstitions, or our lack of resolve. And so, for those who find themselves haunted by such internal specters, I offer not a charm or a spell, but a guide, a 7-day meditation, if you will, on how one might conquer your horseman. Task Day 1. Acknowledge the shadow in the glen. Task: before one can confront a foe, one must first admit its existence. Ichabod, bless his timorous heart, **new** of the horseman. He heard the tales, he shivered at the fireplace, he saw shapes in the night. Yet, he permitted the legend to occupy a disproportionate space in his mind, growing in stature with every retelling. Your first task is to identify your own horseman. Is it the fear of failure, whispering doubts as you contemplate a new venture? Is it the envy that gnaws at your contentment, like a perpetual feast held just out of reach? Is it the trepidation of solitude or the dread of ridicule? Name it. Give it form, however vague. Do not dismiss it as mere fancy, for even a fanciful fear can have a very real grip upon your spirit. Ichabod failed not in seeing the horseman, but in letting it consume his vision entirely. Day 2. Trace the hoofprints to their origins once acknowledged. Inquire deeply into the nature of your horseman. Whence does it come? Is it a genuine threat, or a cleverly disguised illusion? For Ichabod, the horseman's lore was woven into the very fabric of Sleepy Hollow old wives' tales, battlefield legends, the somber hues of the Dutch countryside. But was the pursuit itself truly supernatural, or was there a more earthly hand guiding the reins? Reflect on your own fears. Do they stem from past failures, from overheard criticisms, from the whispers of others, or from your own fevered imagination? Are they the echoes of old stories you've told yourself, or are they rooted in a tangible, present reality? Understanding the source is like discerning the path through the forest. It may not dispel the darkness, but it illuminates the way. Day 3. Equip your saddlebag with reason and resolve. Ichabod's saddlebag, alas, was filled mostly with borrowed finery and ill-gotten comestibles, and his mind with fanciful notions. But to face your horseman, you must arm yourself with more substantial provisions. Reason is your compass. It allows you to weigh the evidence, to distinguish between shadow and substance. Resolve is your steady hand on the bridle. It keeps you from bolting at the first rustle in the leaves. Cultivate a sense of self-awareness. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Can you discern between a genuine danger and a mere phantasm of your own anxieties? The courage to face the unknown is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it, guided by your own inner wisdom. Day 4. Chart your course through the haunted grove. A plan, however humble, can lend courage to the faintest heart. Ichabod in his flight had no plan save sheer panic. Had he perchance reasoned, if this is Brom Bones, how might I outwit him? If it is truly a ghost, what then is my defense? He might have conceived a course of action beyond merely urging his ancient horse to greater exertions. Your task now is to sketch a path forward. What small, measurable steps can you take to diminish the power of your horseman? If it is a fear of inadequacy, perhaps a modest course of study, or a small, achievable task that builds confidence. If it is a lingering regret, perhaps an act of reconciliation or self-forgiveness. Do not aim to conquer the entire valley in one leap, but to navigate the immediate stretch of road with intention. Day 5. Face the crossroads of doubt. The moment of truth often arrives unannounced, like the sudden thunder of hooves behind you. For Ichabod, it was the bridge, a point of no return, where legend claimed the horseman vanished. But even as he reached it, his fear propelled him beyond reason. Your 5th day is about confronting these crossroads. It is about taking that first, often uncomfortable, step towards your charted course. It is about speaking that difficult truth, initiating that challenging project, or simply standing firm when your horseman tries to unseat you with doubt. This does not mean charging headlong into peril, but making a conscious choice to move forward, however tremulously, rather than allowing fear to freeze you in place. Remember, true bravery is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to proceed in its presence. Day 6. Ride through the gloom, steadfast and true. The chase, whether spectral or psychological, is seldom a brief sprint. It is often a sustained endurance. Ichabod's pursuit, though short in minutes, must have felt like an eternity. Having taken the initial step, your task now is to maintain your resolve. The horseman of doubt will return. For new guises, the path may grow darker, the winds more chilling. This day calls for perseverance. It is in the steady rhythm of the hooves, the unwavering grip on the reins, that we find strength. It is in the repetition of small, brave acts, day after day, that we build resilience. Do not expect the specter to vanish after a single effort. Like the legends of Sleepy Hollow, fears often linger, but their power diminishes when met with consistent courage and a steadfast heart. Day 7. Embrace the dawn or the lesson therein. And so, after a harrowing pursuit, whether you have outridden your horseman or merely learned to ride alongside it with greater composure, comes the dawn. Ichabod's dawn was a new life, far from Sleepy Hollow, leaving his fate to rumor and speculation. For you, this day is for reflection. Did you truly conquer your horseman, or did you merely understand it better? Perhaps the conquest is not in defeating it utterly, but in diminishing its power over you, in recognizing its tricks, and in learning to respond with greater wisdom and less panic. The true victory lies not necessarily in the outcome of the chase, but in the transformation within yourself. You may still hear the distant thundering of hooves, but you will know that you possess the reason to discern its nature, the courage to face its challenge, and the resolve to choose your own path, unfettered by irrational dread. And that, dear reader, is a triumph more enduring than any fleeting victory over a phantom foe. So ride forth, and may your spirit never be unseated by the specters of the mind. Come closer now, draw your chairs a little nearer, and let the embers of our flickering memories cast long shadows upon the wall. For while the pages of Washington Irving's tale have long since turned, leaving Ichabod Crane to the mists of legend and the Headless Horseman to his spectral ride, the true brilliance of Sleepy Hollow isn't merely in the ghostly chase. Oh no, my friends, it's in the quiet whispers it leaves behind, the profound truths that, like the hollow's own peculiar air, seep into your very bones. Tonight, let us unravel 3 such truths, woven into the very fabric of that sequestered glen. The first truth, etched deeply into the lore of Sleepy Hollow, is this: the potent, often deceptive, interplay between belief and reality. Dusk. From the moment Ichabod Crane sets foot in that enchanted valley, he is not merely observing a community, he is immersing himself in a meticulously crafted narrative. The locals, with their hushed tones and knowing glances, have nurtured a shared folklore, a tapestry of phantoms and wonders that gives their secluded world its unique flavor. And Ichabod, with his penchant for Mather's histories of witchcraft and spectral occurrences, is a willing, eager participant in this collective hallucination. He doesn't just hear the tales of the Headless Horseman, he invites them in, allows them to roost in the darkest corners of his mind, feeding them with every rustling leaf and every shadow-draped branch. Was the Headless Horseman real? Did the spirit of a Hessian trooper truly gallop through the glens, seeking his lost head? Or was it Brom Bones, the shrewd athletic rival, riding a spirited horse and cleverly employing a pumpkin? The genius lies in the exquisite ambiguity. Irving never truly tells us, does he? He leaves us suspended in that delicious uncertainty, much like the hollow itself, forever shrouded in a hazy twilight. This truth reminds us that our perception often shapes our reality. What we choose to believe, what narratives we allow to dominate our thoughts, whether nurtured by tradition, fear, or a mischievous rival, can become as real and as terrifying as any tangible threat. Ichabod, consumed by the stories, quite literally rides headlong into his own fear, a fear brilliantly manipulated by human cunning. The hollow serves as a grand stage where the imagination, left unchecked, can conjure the most vivid specters, sometimes with a little help from a practical joker. And that brings us, quite naturally, to our second truth, the timeless, often comical, yet ultimately poignant portrait of human desire and frailty. Strip away the supernatural trappings, and what do you find beating at the heart of Sleepy Hollow? Universal human passions, raw and undisguised. Ichabod Crane, our gangly protagonist, is a veritable catalog of such desires. He craves comfort, wealth, and status, embodied tantalizingly in the plump charms of Katrina Van Tassel and the promised inheritance of her father's flourishing farm. His courtship is less a matter of romantic affection and more a calculated acquisition, a means to an end. We see his avarice in his admiring gaze at the bountiful pantry, his ambition in his dreams of possessing Katrina's considerable assets. But alongside this acquisitiveness, we also witness profound human frailty, his cowardice, his gullibility, his susceptibility to flattery and fear. He dreams grand dreams of dominion but quakes at the sound of his own footsteps in the dark. Opposite him stands Brom Bones, the boisterous, masculine foil. Brom embodies jealousy, territoriality, and a primal desire to protect what he sees as his. He's not just a prankster, he's a force of nature, driven by the instinct to outwit and outmaneuver his rival for Katrina's affections. Their rivalry, fueled by lust, envy, and pride, is as old as humanity itself. Sleepy Hollow, with its quaint setting, merely provides a backdrop for these eternal human dramas to play out, reminding us that even in the most isolated hamlets, the heart's desires and weaknesses beat with an unchanging rhythm. The pursuit of love, wealth, and dominance often leads to folly, even if it ends with a pumpkin-smashed lantern and a vanished schoolmaster. Finally, we arrive at our third and perhaps most encompassing truth, the profound, almost sentient power of place. Sleepy Hollow is not merely a setting. It is a character, an entity with its own distinct personality, its own atmospheric influence. It exists as a kind of dreamscape, removed from the bustling world, steeped in an ancient quietude and a collective consciousness. Its very name evokes a sense of languor, a gentle detachment from the ordinary. This isolation, this perpetual twilight quality, fosters a unique community, one bound by shared legends and a shared sense of the uncanny. The inhabitants are shaped by their environment, inheriting not just the land but also the stories that cling to its trees and stones like moss. The hollow breathes life into its legends, and its legends, in turn, sustain the hollow's mystique. It is a place where rational thought seems to thin, where the veil between the known and the unknown grows diaphanous. This truth speaks to the deep connection between people and their landscapes, how a specific locale can imbue its residents with a particular temperament, a collective imagination, and a distinct worldview. Sleepy Hollow is a haven for storytelling, where every rustle in the leaves, every creak of the branches, every hoot of an owl, is filtered through a lens of wonder and apprehension. It's a place that both comforts and confounds, a natural crucible for both dreams and nightmares. It is the very genius loci, the spirit of the place, that ultimately orchestrates Ichabod's disappearance, whether by supernatural agency or human design. The hollow embraces its own, weaving them into its tapestry of tales, ensuring that its peculiar magic endures. So, when the autumn winds whisper through the dry cornstalks, or a lonely branch scrapes against your windowpane, remember these truths. Remember how easily belief can twist reality, how persistently human desires drive our actions, and how deeply a place can imprint itself upon our souls. For the legend of Sleepy Hollow, like all great stories, holds up a mirror not just to a vanished time, but to the eternal workings of the human heart and the enduring mystery of the world around us. And that, my friends, is a truth as timeless as the Headless Horseman's ride. My dear reader, draw closer. Let the embers of your hearth flicker, and the shadows lengthen around you, for we stand where the veil between the waking world and ancient whispers grows thin. We have journeyed through the tranquil, yet profoundly unsettling, glens of Sleepy Hollow. We have witnessed the aspirations of a lanky schoolmaster, his heart entangled by a winsome lass and his mind haunted by specters. And we have, perhaps, felt the icy breath of the Headless Horseman himself, galloping on the winds of legend. But what, pray tell, is a legend if not a living, breathing thing? A tapestry woven not merely from threads of fact, but from the shimmering strands of communal memory, inherited dread, and the sheer, unadulterated joy of a good scare told around a flickering fire. The tale of Ichabod Crane and his midnight ride is not merely ink on parchment, nor a fleeting whisper on the breeze. It is the very soul of that valley, etched into ancient trees, echoing in the murmur of the Pacantico, reflected in the wide, apprehensive eyes of children who hear it. It is a story that refuses to be confined by the pages of a book. It yearns to leap forth, to find new voices, new hearts in which to reside. Think not of Ichabod as merely a forgotten pedagogue, nor the horseman as a simple ghoul. They are archetypes, dear friends, cast in the crucible of human imagination. Ichabod, the dreamer, the striver, perpetually just out of reach, a mirror to our own follies and secret hopes. And the horseman, that terrifying embodiment of the unknown, the inevitable, the primal fear that lurks in the deepest recesses of the human psyche, forever charging, forever pursuing. They are not static figures of history, but dynamic forces, forever reenacting their spectral drama in the minds of those who dare to lend them an ear. And this, my kindred spirit, is where you come in. For a legend, to truly live, requires more than just an initial telling. It demands participation. It calls out to you, not with a booming command, but with a subtle, insistent tug on the sleeve of your curiosity. Do you feel it? That yearning to look over your shoulder on a moonless night, to listen for hoofbeats where only wind rustles leaves. That is the legend extending its spectral hand, inviting you to step beyond the role of mere observer and become something more profound, a guardian, a witness, a living conduit for its enduring power. How might one join such a legend? Perhaps you will walk the very paths that Ichabod trod, feeling the chill of the evening air, imagining the creak of his saddle. Perhaps you will linger by a campfire, and as the flames dance and shadows lengthen, you will find yourself sharing the tale, your voice adding another thread to its intricate fabric. Perhaps, in a quiet moment of contemplation, you will simply choose to believe, if only for a fleeting instant, that such spectral riders might indeed patrol the dark roads, their headless forms etched against the stars. To join the legend is not to surrender to delusion, but to embrace the rich tapestry of human experience that storytelling provides. It is to connect with generations past and future, bound by the shared thrill of mystery and the enduring power of imagination. You will gain a deeper understanding of how places become imbued with spirit, how history blends with folklore, and how even the most terrifying tales can hold a strange, comforting beauty. You will become a part of something larger than yourself, a custodian of the fantastical, a keeper of the quaint and the chilling. Your mind will become fertile ground where the seeds of wonder can sprout anew, transforming the mundane into the magical, the ordinary into the extraordinary. So, go forth, my friend. Carry the whisper of Sleepy Hollow with you. Let the image of the frantic chase, the pumpkin head, the vanishing schoolmaster, never truly fade. For in embracing the legend, you do not merely recall a story, you ensure its immortality. You become a part of its unfolding, a link in the unbroken chain of human wonder and fear, passing the torch of enchantment from one heart to the next. The Headless Horseman rides on, but only because we, the living, grant him the steeds of our imagination. Join him then, not in flight, but in spirit. Join the legend, and let its timeless mystery echo forevermore within you.